I walked away from my family. Then my sister vanished without a word. I'm Kate. We weren't rich, but we always had what we needed. My parents worked hard to provide for us, and that was always an example to me. When I grew up, I realized that stability and independence were things I needed to strive for. It didn't happen as quickly as I wanted, but I achieved it. Lisa was always different. She was more carefree, and she often got what she wanted, though it wasn't usually through her merits but by manipulating others. Maybe I was too strict as an older sibling and didn't understand how hard it was for her. Or maybe I was just grateful for what I had and didn't notice how she constantly took advantage of the situation. Either way, I always tried to stay out of her business, even when it seemed weird or unnecessary. My parents always supported Lisa, and in the end, I felt like I was the second player in the family. They tried to do everything to make her comfortable, even when it wasn't fair to me. And I, instead of resisting, quietly accepted it because I didn't want to fight with them. I had always been strong and independent, and that was how I lived, keeping my distance from what couldn't be changed. But then, when my parents suddenly started talking about the inheritance, I realized I had been wrong all these years. I realized that, although I didn't want to admit it, there were issues in my family that couldn't be ignored. My parents started hinting that I should give half of the inheritance to Lisa. This was something I didn't expect at all. My first reaction was, no, I won't do it. I worked hard for what I have, and I wasn't about to give up half of it, even if it was a family matter. They knew that I had worked harder than anyone else and that everything I had earned, I invested in this house. And Lisa? She was always special, always in the spotlight, even when she made mistakes. Then my mother said, Kate, you know she's going through a tough time right now. She needs support. She can't do it on her own. I listened and thought about how her mistakes always turned into my problems. And then, when I refused to share, my parents got upset. My mother, who had always been so gentle, said, Kate, how can you be so heartless? Lisa is suffering, and you're refusing to help her, even when she's asking. And I stood there, unable to believe what I was hearing. But why should I give her half of what was mine, after everything? I found out that a few months ago, Lisa had stolen money from them, and now she was manipulating them to get more. The next day, I got a call from Lisa. She said she wanted to talk. I could feel my heart race because I knew this would be an important conversation. But what she said shocked me even more. You don't understand, Kate. I just want everything to be fair. You don't have the right to take everything for yourself. I can't live without this, and you need to understand that, she said. And that's when I realized she wasn't suffering. She was just continuing to manipulate. And now, when I refused, it became just another game. I hung up the phone, feeling the weight of her words pressing on my chest. I had hoped it wouldn't come to this, her twisting the situation to make me feel guilty. But it did. Lisa had always known how to manipulate people, especially our parents. And now she was doing the same with me. I didn't know what to do. It was hard to shake the feeling that I was somehow wrong for refusing to help her, even though I knew deep down that it wasn't about helping anymore. It wasn't about family anymore. It was about control. I went to bed that night with a heavy heart, tossing and turning, unable to sleep. All I could think about was how my family had changed. How had we gone from a close-knit, loving family to this? Why was Lisa always allowed to get away with everything, while I had to work for everything I had? And why now was I being made out to be the villain? The next morning, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. Confront my parents. I knew this conversation wouldn't be easy, but I had to do it. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. I drove to their house, my mind racing with all the things I wanted to say. When I arrived, I found them sitting at the kitchen table, just like old times. But the atmosphere was different now. It felt strained, tense. They looked at me with expressions that were a mix of disappointment and confusion. Kate, we need to talk, my father said as soon as I walked in. I know, I replied. I need to understand why this is happening. Why you're asking me to give half of my inheritance to Lisa. My mother's eyes filled with tears, and she shook her head. It's not just about the money, Kate. You don't understand how hard this is for Lisa. She's been through so much lately, and she's struggling. We're just trying to help her. I felt a surge of frustration rise within me. Struggling? You don't think I've been struggling too? I've been working my ass off to build a life. And now you want me to give it all up because Lisa can't face the consequences of her actions? You don't understand, my father said, his voice soft but firm. You're being too hard on her. You've always been so strong, but Lisa needs us now more than ever. She's been through a lot. I stared at them, trying to process what they were saying. I couldn't believe it. They were so blinded by their need to protect Lisa that they couldn't see how wrong this was. How unfair it was to ask me to give up everything I had worked for just because Lisa had made a mess of her own life. You're right, I said finally, my voice cold. I don't understand, but I'm not going to be the one to fix her mistakes. I've spent my whole life doing what was expected of me, but this time, I'm not giving in. The silence that followed was thick with tension. My parents looked at each other, then back at me, as if they couldn't quite believe what they were hearing. And maybe they couldn't. After all, they had always expected me to be the responsible one, the one who did what was right, even when it wasn't fair. But this time, I wasn't going to bend. I had my own family to think about. I had my own life to live. And if they couldn't see that, then maybe it was time to let go. I'm sorry, I said, my voice breaking slightly, but I can't do this. I can't keep pretending that everything's okay when it's not. With that, I turned and walked out of the house, feeling the weight of the decision I had just made settle over me. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if my relationship with my parents would ever be the same again. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was doing the right thing for me. Later that evening, Lisa called again. This time, there was no pretending. She was angry, and it was clear that she wasn't going to back down easily. You think you can just walk away from all of this? She snapped. You think you're better than me? You're not better than me, Kate. You're just selfish. I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to shout back, to tell her everything I was feeling, to let her know just how hurt and betrayed I felt. But I stayed calm, knowing that arguing with her wouldn't change anything. I'm not selfish, Lisa, I said finally. I'm just not going to let you manipulate me anymore. You need to take responsibility for your actions. I can't keep cleaning up your mess. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I thought she was going to hang up. But then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, I'm sorry, Kate. I really am. I don't know what to do anymore. And for the first time, I heard something in her voice that wasn't manipulation or anger. It was vulnerability. I wasn't sure if it was genuine or just another tactic, but for a moment, I allowed myself to believe it. I'm here if you ever really want to talk, I said softly, before hanging up the phone. The following days were a blur of emotions. I felt a strange mix of relief and unease. The conversation with Lisa hadn't gone as I expected, but it didn't make me feel any better. I was left questioning whether I had done the right thing by standing my ground. My parents were still silent, and Lisa, though she had apologized, hadn't made an effort to reach out again. It was as if we had reached some kind of silent agreement. They'd back off, and I'd keep living my life without the constant pressure to fix everything for them. But that wasn't how things were going to end. I could feel it in my bones. It was too easy to believe that everything would just fall into place, that I could move forward, unaffected by the chaos my family had stirred. But the reality was much messier than that. A week later, I got a call from my mother. Her voice was shaky, and I immediately felt the dread in my stomach. She rarely called unless it was something serious, and I knew what this was about. Kate, she started, her voice cracking. We need to talk. It's about Lisa. I felt my pulse quicken. My first thought was that something had happened. Something worse than I could have imagined. What's going on? Is she okay? I asked, my voice suddenly cold with worry. It's not that, she replied quickly, trying to reassure me. It's just, she's upset. She's hurt. And she's threatening to cut us all out of her life if we don't support her in this. Her words tumbled out, and I could sense the frustration building in her. I don't know what to do, Kate. She says you're the only one who can fix things. I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. Of course, Lisa would try to turn this around, to twist the situation so that once again, it was my responsibility to make everything right. Mom, I said, forcing the calmness into my voice, you can't keep letting her control everything. You've been doing this for years, and look where it's gotten you. You can't keep rewarding her bad behavior. She's an adult now. She needs to face the consequences. But my mother's response was a strained sigh. I know, but she's our daughter. I just don't want to lose her. I closed my eyes, trying to take in what she was saying. I understood that my parents didn't want to lose Lisa. They never had. But there was a difference between protecting someone and enabling them. And they had been enabling her for far too long. I'm sorry, Mom, but I can't be a part of this anymore, I said softly. I'm done. I've done my part. If she wants to continue manipulating everyone, that's on her. But I won't be dragged into it anymore. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear my mother trying to process what I was saying. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, I understand. I just hope one day you'll see that we were doing this out of love. I hung up, my chest tight. My heart ached for her. I knew she only wanted what was best for Lisa, but her idea of best was so far removed from reality that it hurt. My mother had never learned to set boundaries, and that was why Lisa always seemed to win. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my conversation with my mom. There was a part of me that still wished things were different, that I could just go back to how they were before, when everything was simpler. But the truth was, things couldn't go back. Not now. Not after everything that had happened. And then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Lisa. I hesitated before opening it, knowing what was coming. Lisa wasn't one to send a simple text without some kind of emotional weight behind it. I'm sorry for everything, Kate, the message began. I don't know what's wrong with me. I was just so scared of losing you all. I've messed up so much, and I can't fix it. But I need you. Please don't give up on me. I stared at the message for a long time, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to just ignore it, to let her figure it out on her own. Another part of me wanted to reach out, to try and help her, to give her the benefit of the doubt. But deep down, I knew that I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep being her safety net every time she messed up. So, I decided to respond. I'm not giving up on you, Lisa, but I can't keep fixing things for you. You have to take responsibility for your own life. I've done everything I can to help, but this is where I draw the line. I hit send and sat back, waiting for the storm that was sure to come. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from Lisa. I let it ring for a few seconds before picking up, knowing that what she said next could change everything. Why are you doing this to me? She demanded, her voice thick with emotion. Why can't you just help me? I can't do this without you. I shook my head, feeling a deep sense of exhaustion settle in. Because, Lisa, you're not a child anymore. You have to learn how to do things on your own. I've always been there for you, but I can't keep enabling you. It's not helping either of us. Then maybe I don't need you, she shot back, her voice breaking. Maybe I don't need any of you. And with that, she hung up. I sat in silence, the weight of her words hanging in the air. For a moment, I wasn't sure if I had made the right decision. But then I remembered all the years of manipulation, the sacrifices, the constant feeling of being pulled in 1,000 directions. And I knew that, despite the hurt, I had done what I needed to do. It wasn't about being right or wrong anymore. It was about reclaiming my life, my space, and my sanity. And if that meant losing Lisa for good, then that's what it had to be. The days following my conversation with Lisa were a mix of relief and tension. On the outside, everything seemed normal. I kept my daily routine, spent time with my husband and kids, and went to work. But inside, I felt like I was walking on a tightrope. I couldn't shake the feeling that the next blow-up was just around the corner. To be honest, part of me kept waiting for something to happen. A message from Lisa, a call, a dramatic plea. But there was nothing. It was eerie, like a storm waiting to break, but never quite making it. I couldn't figure out if it was a temporary calm before the chaos, or if she had finally given up. Then, one evening, as I was sitting on the couch with my husband, my phone buzzed. It wasn't Lisa this time, but a message from my mother. I froze for a moment before opening it. Kate, I don't know what's happening. Lisa's disappeared. She left her apartment, and no one's heard from her in days. We're worried. I felt my stomach twist. I hadn't expected this. I thought Lisa would be angry, maybe distant, but disappearing? That wasn't like her. For all her flaws, Lisa always had a way of staying in control, or at least keeping up appearances. This felt different. I stared at the message for a long time. My mind raced. Was this her way of punishing me? Or had something really happened? Despite everything that had happened, a part of me still couldn't shake the feeling of responsibility. I had distanced myself from her for a reason, but now I wasn't sure if it was the right choice. I told my husband what had happened. He looked at me, concern written across his face, but also a hint of frustration. He'd always been supportive, but even he had grown tired of the constant drama with Lisa. "You need to do what feels right, Kate," he said. "But don't let this drag you back in. You've done everything you can." I knew he was right. I couldn't let myself get sucked back into her mess, but a part of me still wanted to help. It was hard to shake the feeling that I owed her something, even after everything. My phone buzzed again, and this time, it was a call from my mother. "Kate, please, can you come to the house? We need to talk. It's really bad." My heart dropped. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my keys and told my husband I was going. He gave me a look, a silent reminder of what I was walking into, but I didn't need reminding. I already knew. When I got to my parents' house, I found them sitting at the kitchen table, looking defeated. My mother's eyes were swollen from crying, and my father looked tired, as though he hadn't slept in days. They both turned to me when I walked in, their expressions a mixture of hope and fear. "Kate," my mother began, "we don't know what to do. Lisa's been missing for almost a week now. We've contacted the police, but it's like she vanished. No one knows where she is." I sat down at the table, my mind racing. Did you try calling her? Maybe she's just taking a break from everything? "No," my father said, his voice heavy. "We've called her phone, texted her, even tried going to her apartment. She's not there. It's like she disappeared into thin air." I could feel the weight of their words pressing down on me. I knew they were scared, but this wasn't just about being scared anymore. This was about something deeper, something far more serious, something I couldn't ignore. "Have you checked her bank accounts?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "Maybe she's just avoiding you, trying to make a point?" My father shook his head. "We've checked. Nothing. No activity. It's like she's just gone." I didn't know what to say. I had spent so much time distancing myself from Lisa, but now it seemed like the very thing I had been avoiding had caught up with all of us. My heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't just a family drama anymore. This was real. Lisa was missing, and it was my fault. At least, that's how I felt. If I hadn't shut her out, maybe things wouldn't have escalated this way. I stared at my parents, trying to process everything. The fear in their eyes was undeniable, and despite everything that had happened, I couldn't turn my back on them. I couldn't just walk away. "I'll help," I said, my voice steady despite the storm brewing in my chest. "I'll help find her." My parents looked at me, surprised, as though they hadn't expected me to say that. "Are you sure, Kate?" my mother asked softly. I nodded. "Yeah, I know things are complicated. I know I've distanced myself, but I can't just leave her like this. She's still my sister." They both seemed to breathe a little easier after I said that, but I could see the exhaustion in their faces. They were scared, and I wasn't sure if I was doing the right thing, but I couldn't just sit by and do nothing. As I left my parents' house, I felt a weight settle over me. I wasn't sure what I was about to walk into, but I knew that I had to face it. It was no longer about inheritance or family drama. It was about someone I loved, someone who needed help, even if she hadn't known how to ask for it. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with possibilities. Where was Lisa? What had happened to her? And most importantly, what was I supposed to do now? The next morning, I woke up with a sense of urgency I hadn't felt in a long time. I had no idea where Lisa was or what had happened, but I couldn't keep wondering. I needed to act. I called the police again, trying to get any new information about her disappearance. But all they could offer was the same. She was missing, and they were working on it. But there were no leads yet. I couldn't wait any longer. I needed to take matters into my own hands. I started reaching out to people who might know where she was. I contacted her friends, her ex-boyfriend, anyone who could shed some light on what was going on. No one had heard from her. It was like she had dropped off the face of the earth. As the hours passed, the dread in my stomach grew heavier. I kept imagining the worst-case scenarios. Lisa in trouble, or worse, hiding from something she'd done. It was all starting to feel like a bad dream. I couldn't shake the guilt gnawing at me. I had turned my back on her when she needed me the most. And now, I was scrambling to find her, trying to make things right. But was it already too late? By late afternoon, I had no answers, and I was exhausted. I sat in my car outside Lisa's apartment complex, staring up at the building, wondering if I would ever get an answer to the questions that had been haunting me. I couldn't sit there forever, though. I had a family of my own to think about. I needed to go home and try to make sense of everything. Just as I was about to start the car, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. My heart raced as I answered it. "Kate, it's Lisa." I almost dropped the phone. "Where are you? We've been looking for you. Everyone's worried sick." There was a long pause on the other end, and when she finally spoke, her voice sounded distant, almost hollow. "I know. I'm sorry. I didn't know where else to go. I've been staying with someone. I couldn't face you all, not after everything that happened." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. At least she was alive. That was something. But her words sent a chill through me. "Who are you staying with, Lisa? Where are you?" "I can't tell you that right now," she replied. I needed space to think. I need to figure things out on my own. I'll come back when I'm ready. I just didn't want you to keep searching for me. I didn't want you to feel like you had to fix everything. Lisa, you don't have to do this alone," I said, my voice softening. "You don't have to run away from everything. We can work through this. But you have to be honest with us. You can't keep shutting us out." "I know," she whispered, "but I don't know how to fix it, Kate. I don't know how to fix what I've done. And I'm scared. I'm scared of losing everything." I could feel the weight of her fear through the phone. Despite everything, despite all the pain she'd caused, I couldn't help but feel for her. She was lost, and so was I. We both were. "I'm not going to let you lose everything, Lisa," I said, my voice breaking. "I'll be here for you, no matter what. But you have to come back. You can't hide forever." Another long pause. I could hear her breathing on the other end, and for a moment, I thought she might hang up again. But then, in a small voice, she said, "I'll come home. But, can you promise me one thing?" "What?" "Promise me you won't give up on me. No matter how much I mess up, promise me you won't give up." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of her words settle in my chest. It was a promise I wasn't sure I could keep, but I knew I had to try. I had to. For her. For us. "I promise," I said quietly. "But you have to help yourself too, Lisa. You can't keep running away from your problems." She didn't respond right away, but after a few seconds, I heard her whisper, "I'll try." After we hung up, I sat in my car for a long time, staring out the windshield, letting the gravity of everything sink in. I didn't know what the future held for me or for Lisa, but I knew one thing. Things couldn't go back to the way they were before. The past was too messy, too complicated. But maybe, just maybe, we could start over. Maybe we could rebuild the trust that had been shattered, piece by piece. I wasn't sure how long it would take or if it was even possible, but I was willing to try. When I got home, I hugged my kids a little tighter. I was so caught up in the mess of my family that I had almost forgotten what really mattered. My husband kissed me, sensing the exhaustion and the weight on my shoulders. "You okay?" he asked gently. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I really was. "I will be." The phone call with Lisa had brought some relief, but it also opened up a new set of questions. Was I making the right choice? Was I doing this for her, or for me? It didn't matter, though. All I knew was that I had made the promise, and I was going to keep it.